Welcome to the Solacene Agora. Coexist with flora. Windows for Aurora. Forgetting Sodom and Gomorrah. Remembering Pandora. Ciao, Senora.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Solacene, the podcast where we imagine a beautiful, sustainable, tactile future. This week we have a special guest, Drake. Thank you for coming on the episode.
Oh,
I thought you were him based on that poem.
Yeah, it was a little bit inspired by Drake's new album. As I said before we started recording, shout out for all the dogs, the Solacene dogs.
The Beagles.
The Beagles. Yeah. I guess that's a Solacene recommends for this week, actually.
Beagles.
Or Drake's album. Or we could say Nightmare on Elm Street, which we watched half of last night before you started to faint.
I had a panic attack.
Yeah, and I had what was perhaps the most predictably bad night's sleep in human history.
Do you want to know something fun? No one listening cares, but I had perhaps the best sleep of my life. Your alarm went off at 6:30 this morning, and I hadn't woken up once through the night, and I just thought it was like 1 a.m. or something. I was like, Why does Aaron have an alarm for like 1 a.m.? And then I looked, and it was 6:30.
Yeah, I had that children's rhyme that they were singing in the movie. 1, 2, like that, stuck in my head all.
That would creep me
all
up.
nightmares.
Yeah. So this week we're going to be designing the Solacene Mall, kind of solarpunky mall for a sustainable future, and then we're going to wrap up the episode by talking about, kind of on theme, by talking about Nightmare on Elm Street, our favorite movie costumes. Maybe Nightmare on Elm Street will make an appearance. I don't expect it to, though.
So to start with the mall, I had a quote, which is the first thing that comes up on Google. Sounds so like ill-prepared when you search for death of the mall. Because I feel like it's almost a cliche. Yeah. It's almost a trope that people talk about that for decades. But it says on Google, a vestige of the 90s and early 2000s, the shopping mall experience has been abandoned in favor of unique corner boutiques and hole-in-the-wall restaurant finds. Much less concerned with similitude, young people today are searching for individual consumer experiences that fit their own unique style and personality.
That's a good way of putting it.
Do you think that's what it is?
I was thinking a bit about it, obviously, in preparation for this episode, and I feel like it's not like people don't go shopping anymore. People go shopping. Maybe there was an era right when online shopping took off where people stopped shopping, and maybe there were no boutiques or malls. But lately, at least in Montreal, there's a lot of boutiques and things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want this episode to be like why malls suck or how the mall died, even though that's kind of what I just started it with. But it's more what they could be, I guess, in the utopian future. And so I think we have to ground it a little bit in perhaps what they once were in the heyday, perhaps what people feel they're missing today. Because I have I feel like every time we walk around a mall, we are either silently or out loud just criticizing everything. But maybe that reflects poorly on us. But also I think something people commonly say is, or that I've heard anyway, good riddance. You know, it's this big mecca of like capitalism or materialism or consumerism, and why should we have to gather in a place for buying? But I think that is not necessarily a bad thing, something being a mecca of goods, because everybody loves farmers markets.
Exactly.
Everybody likes those big get-togethers where there's different vendors, food, clothes, whatever. It's just the nature of these things. So I don't think they are like inherently bad places to be.
And it's like with the fall of malls, it's not like we've stopped shopping or that capitalism has all of a sudden stopped.
Yeah.
But it's gotten more intense and more of a chokehold on our lives. And you and I visited Greece last summer, and we visited the Agora. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's why I opened the poem. Yeah. Welcome to the Solacene Agora.
Exactly. And it was like, this was thousands of years ago, and people were gathering in a place of commerce because like you'll always have to buy things. So why not make it a pleasant experience? The Agora was outdoors, so why not make it outdoors? Why not make it not soul-sucking?
Yeah, soul-sucking. I like that you mentioned that, because that's something else I wanted to reveal today on the episode for the first time, which is, I guess, a game or just a sad little categorization that we've been doing for the last few months, which is just having conversations about whether something is soul or soulless, which is the most arbitrary and subjective discussion that I suppose one can have. The parameters are almost deliberately vague and very often contradictory.
Yes.
But it's more like you know it when you see it. Banana Republic.
Soulless. A diner.
Soul.
Exactly.
So
So
you can see how it goes, etc., etc. And so I thought maybe the clearest way for you and I to delineate the Solacene Mall from the current mall, Seoul.
it's in the name. Solacene,
Yeah.
the Seoul Mall.
Should we add a U?
Yeah.
But if we inscribe it into the current Solacene logo, just a really, really tiny one, I mean.
Yeah.
So we don't change the spacing of anything, we just put tiny.
Yeah.
And people just think it's a dot.
Cool. I had a lot of points on the Solacene Mall, so rein me in if needs be. I'm just going to go through them. The first thing that came to my mind of the Solacene Mall was that there'd be workshops, ateliers, where things are actually made in the mall, or at least can be worked on in the mall. In the mall where I grew up, there was a leather shop where people would bring in their boots, their wallets, their belts to be refinished or mended. And I always thought that was really cool. And it was interesting because as the mall died, this one shop remained. So obviously people have a demand for this
no,
sort
I
of
mean,
thing.
we grew up in different places, but my mall had the same thing. And it's this strange copy and paste strip mall that we've noticed across Canada and perhaps just across all of North America, when they all have the exact same, even the things that are supposedly sold that you'd think would differ, they're always, there's always a little leather place.
Yeah.
Or maybe just because we're in Nova Scotia, a little, skate repair place. And a massage parlor for some reason.
Mine also had a massage parlor.
Yeah, I know.
Strange.
Because they're all the same.
Yeah. But workshops, because in the Solacene, people will be more inclined to repair, mend, upcycle, and so maybe you want to go to the mall, you're feeling fashion. You feel like having a fashion day, but you obviously don't want to buy something new, but you're like, maybe I'll bring in my old skirt and have trim put on the bottom. Because not everyone, even in the Solacene, will be handy. Some people will just have other people do it for them, and that will always be the case.
Right.
So I think having places for the less DIY inclined to bring their things.
So what you're talking about there is this very clear intention of the person. You know what you want to do maybe before you go there.
Yes.
I think that's very important. But along the lines of soul being this contradictory metric, let me talk about what I also wanted to define the Solacene Mall with. Serendipity. The opposite of intention. Can you define serendipity?
It is a chance encounter, a moment of everything feeling like it is coming together and then something happens.
Pretty much. I think the definition I had was the occurrence and development of events by chance in a happy or beneficial way. So you got that pretty nailed on. I think you could work at a dictionary, Solacene dictionary. Who knows? And my inspiration for this was Hogwarts. Pure serendipity all over the place. You never know when a tapestry, you'll tumble through it, through some secret passageway, a stair will give way, the staircase that you're on will just rotate, and you'll have to go somewhere else. The portraits will start shouting at you. Always a room will appear where there wasn't any before, and it could mean, or it could present itself in an infinite number of ways. So I think if we could somehow harness this energy in the Solacene Mall, what are you saying? You're pointing at me.
I had rotating stores as my second point.
You know what I have on here?
What do you have?
I just wrote spinning restos. So I think
Okay.
we're on the same... You mean physically rotating?
No, I didn't,
but that's what I'm talking about.
I thought you'd have something like that. So I meant rotating in the other definition of the word of pop-ups, things like that, because I do think an element of surprise, an element of mooch in the mall. But I think rotating restaurants, why not?
Yeah.
Physically rotating.
This is why we complement each other well.
Yes.
It's one of my bucket list items, obviously, to go into one of those spinning restaurants that looks like an
UFO?
alien spacecraft.
Yeah.
But can we talk a little bit about the architecture of this mall? Because neither of us are architects, but of course we have our amateur armchair architecture opinions.
Or George Costanza.
Right. And they are mostly informed, I think, by our dissatisfaction walking around existing malls. Namely, that it's almost an in-joke how physically bad it makes you feel.
Yeah, let us know in the comments or by email if you also feel thirsty when you're at the mall. Simultaneously thirsty and you always need to use the washroom.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's partially that There's never any lights. For some, I mean, in Montreal, they're often underground. But just all malls, they never have windows. And it's like, what's with this? And also that they are always hard to find what you want.
Yeah.
You're just turning corners and it's like, where's the exit? Oh, even when you're trying to leave, it's like, is this the same way that I got out? So I think just remedying those very essential bodily like reactions that we have to it, light is nice. Maybe indoor, outdoor, courtyard, maybe some kind of Hobbit style curved walls and roof that you can walk around with grass on top. Or maybe they have like a greenhouse style, really tall ceiling with like with glass that light can come through. Actually, the mall in Halifax, Nova Scotia, we don't want to be too disparaging because that's actually has a nice upper floor that is exactly like this with
very, very bright. Very
bright because it's a glass ceiling.
Yeah, I think I had for my only architectural point was that air and water are important elements. And water. And it's kind of like Pokemon or the airbenders, but I was like, I think those two elements will play a big part because air circulation, air quality needs to be considered. And yeah, there being water. It could be literal like little streams for just like the vibes.
Yeah.
But also...
And fish in the walls as well. It's a very Solacene feature.
Just give me water fountains. Water fountains in the Solacene are going to be very important.
It's a funny contrast. Actually, you mentioned water fountains. It reminds me of airports, which in theory should make you feel just as bad as malls, but they're almost always much nicer.
It's true.
And I guess it's because they are airier, because maybe there's less people in it, maybe there's more space.
Yeah.
But really, it's a similar building where most of the new ones are just full of restaurants and little stores and benches, but for some reason, they don't make you feel so thirsty or garbage.
Yeah. I think
temperature is also key.
There's an element of designs of mall. I couldn't find any proof of this, but my conspiracy theory is that malls, they play annoying music. They're slightly stuffy to make you want to get out of there, so you just will make rash decisions and spend more money.
Yeah, you told me about this yesterday. I was a little bit worried. You said, well, yeah, quite often I'll just buy something just to get out of there. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense.
That was poorly phrased, but it's like, okay, you're in a thrift store, you're starting to feel the impending doom, and then you have like two sweaters in your hands, you can't really decide between them. Just buy them both.
Rather than having to listen to
Bruno Mars for the 8th time within that 20-minute span somehow.
So music in the Solacene Mall, are we just going to have a gong?
I think a gong.
And little wind chimes.
Little singing bowls. Maybe it's live.
Something else that's really fun is when airports will just have a bird in them. It's like, how did that get there?
Yeah.
And it's not supposed to be there.
No.
It's kind of roosting in the top.
Yeah.
So I think that could... Maybe it's not good for products. But it's an idea of, plant life, let's say that.
Yeah.
Because let's talk strip malls. Those big, big, big plants. For some reason, the biggest plants you'll ever see.
Indoors, for some reason. Yeah.
Are they solar or soulless?
They're soulless in a way.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't make sense, but they are.
Because I was always impressed, even in our little hole-in-the-wall strip mall, there were just like huge indoor trees. Yeah. And it's like, normally I'd be impressed by this,
so
but
big?
It's... Yeah, I feel like they absorb the negative energy from all of the sales people.
Oh, right.
And then they're just kind of, they're not trees anymore. They're just like vestiges of bad
so if
energy.
They have a fruited, it would be poisonous.
Exactly. That's really woo-woo, but it feels something like that. So yeah, just having air and trees. I was once in an outdoor strip mall in, I want to say it was in Florida. I don't know exactly. And I remember saying to my mom, I was probably 12, I was like, why aren't all malls like this? And she was like, well, because in Nova Scotia, there's winter.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't really have it outdoors. But then I said, well, why not just have retractable roofs? So for the nice months of the year, you can have it be airy. And even the library where you and I went to university, apparently the roof used to retract or something over the courtyard, but then it's just permanently fixed in place now.
A mall having a courtyard.
Yeah.
It would just be such a nice... That's why I say indoor, outdoor, because like, it doesn't have to be all outdoor like a ancient Greek agora, but why have it all be indoor?
Yeah.
Like, just have little... Like a Zelda dungeon.
Yeah.
We don't want all dungeon, because sometimes you get that nice respite where there's a little outdoor passage. It's so indoor, kid. I don't know what I'm turning into, but something else about shopping I like is those signs that poke, usually not in malls, but just on streets.
Okay.
The little square signs.
Yeah.
not big neon ones.
I know what you mean.
We saw one yesterday.
Yeah.
Very old European style.
Mm.
And so maybe if we can incorporate some of that into the mall, especially if, as you're saying, the stores will rotate, so it's less about having massive permanent winners fixtures. Also winners. Soulless?
There would be no winners.
Yeah.
So here's my proposition. And I think you'll disagree with me on a few things. But my proposition with like the stores and the contents of these malls, speaking of winners, is that one, it will be mainly apparel focused. Not just clothes, there'll be shoes and accessories and things. But I think having designated places for certain tasks is important. Saying that, it won't be just clothing stores. There will also be activities going on and food.
Why would I disagree with that? I love activities.
I know, but I thought you might disagree with it in that you might think there should also be hardware stores there and those types of things.
No, because that sounds very Walmart Supercenter.
Okay, I'm glad you agree.
Shop for everything.
Yes.
But if it's an outdoor mall, then these things all kind of leak into each other, right?
It's true.
Like a couple of nice shopping experiences that we've had, I think, in Quebec City.
Yeah.
There's one road that's just really pleasant and walkable and feels like you're in some fairy tale town, like Diagon Alley in Harry Potter, with like the stores like leaning down across you from either side. And there's also verticality, which is really nice. Stairs, no escalators. Those are soulless.
Yes.
Unless they're those rotating ones. Those are soul. I don't make the rules. I'm just conveying them. And also when we went to Paris, there was this like magnificent and grimy secondhand, I can only describe it as a complex, where it was like partially indoors, partially outdoors, and it was pure serendipity because it was like you just did not know what you were going to stumble on. Yeah. Obviously, we were visitors, but I get the sense that even people who live there, it was so randomly arranged that you had no clue.
Yeah, it felt very much like you were in Diagon Alley because you could turn a corner. It's like I was just here, but it doesn't actually make sense by the rules of physics and geometry. I had another rule for the Solacene Mall, and it's that only 25% of things could be imported. How do you feel about that?
It's some kind of number. Yeah. I think local character is key, not just in the building, but obviously in what's being sold. Like that's why I'm saying Banana Republic. Yeah. Soulless.
Because I was thinking there would be these sort of, I like general stores. I remember in Nova Scotia there's this place that was called Sherbrooke Village. Were you ever at Sherbrooke Village? So it's a model old-timey town. So it was like early 20th century, and it was maintained and run. Everyone would be in period costumes and selling these sort of things. And there was a general store where they'd sell candy, and they sold all these kind of like old-timey things. And I like that idea of a sort of Walmart like one-stop shop, but not necessarily so soulless, because it would be a general store. So maybe the person who owns it is local, and they curate the things they sell. But a lot of the kitschy, like, general stores that are around Montreal, there's, like, these things called, like, the mini dépanneur is, like, the name of it. It's, like, the mini corner store. But it's all overpriced and not practical. It's just kitschy and for, like, souvenirs. Yeah. But I think genuine, like, dépanneurs and, like, corner stores is cool. And the person curating the stuff.
Eco.
Yes.
You know what's neat about airports also?
What?
Those conveyor belts.
The walking ones?
The walking ones.
The human conveyor belts?
Yeah. Obviously it sounds very, like I don't think they're amazing, but that's the only place you see them.
It's true.
Like it's just this neat thing. Oh, I go to the airport, get to see that thing. Or even the round conveyor belts that they have your luggage on. It's just this neat oh, there's mine, got to go run up and grab it. Like there's something almost carnival-esque about that. And so I think when you're talking interactivity, one of the few, it's still soulless, but big mall stores that I like going into is Decathlon, which sells a lot of kind of budget sports goods because they have a little rock climbing wall and a ping pong table and a little football goal set up that you can just kick it into, and it makes you feel free again. And also, I don't know the math, but I feel like that makes you more inclined to buy something because otherwise you don't want to be like a freeloader.
It's true.
So another idea I had for that was little scarecrows all around the mall.
Okay.
You said we're apparel themed. Scarecrows or mannequins, whatever you want to call them.
Oh, okay.
No, but we're in autumn, so they could be themed.
Yes.
Scarecrow Festival. And so they're not in the stores, because I think that can be sometimes a little bit of a waste of space plus disconcerting. They're just dotted all the way throughout, and they just have clothes on. And you go up to one, and you're like, oh, where's the tag? That's from that place. I'll go to that place.
But still, it's not just like buy everything from us. It's working together.
Yeah, working together. So it's a little bit of like a scavenger hunt kind of puzzle themed shopping.
Yeah, my mall had, I remember during the back to school season, they would have that sort of exhibit. There were like 10 mannequins when you walked in, all wearing different things.
Yeah.
One of them be holding a backpack from the backpack store, which every mall has.
The backpack store,
Yes.
yeah, we know they have that. Bentley.
I wasn't going to name drop, but yeah, Bentley.
Who knows how that's still going? Are they?
I have a suspicion that they went.
Are they sold? They're right on the line.
They're on the line. They're on the cusp. I'm glad we agree on that. Here's my other proposition. Lockers.
Ooh.
Because you know when you, especially in the winter in Canada, you walk in, you have your backpack, I'm not going to spoil the garment of the week, but your manteau, your coat.
Yes.
And then you're so warm when you get in there and your hair is scratching you. It would just be nice to like put your things in a locker while you're shopping. Even if maybe you're doing a lot of shopping for a new season or back to school or whatever, maybe you can put your things in the locker as you go. So it's less of an overwhelming experience and you can breathe and like actually make decisions instead of, as I said, being uncomfortable making rash decisions.
True. That also reminds me of what you and I both agree is the best time of year for the mall. 3, 2, 1, Christmas.
Yeah.
That's by far, I don't know if it's Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, or what it is, but when they put this massive tree in the middle with lights on, I mean, what if it was open at night?
Ooh.
What if it was candlelit shopping?
Yeah.
These are probably just awful ideas, but just throwing them out there.
Mm-hmm.
How bad could it be?
Yeah.
My final thought about like the literal arrangement of clothes in the stores is that every store shouldn't be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them should have, as I said, like a spinning conveyor belt where you can only see the things sometimes, or like Yeezy tried to do with just the garbage bins full of clothes and everybody hated that. Or, you know, I spoke to you before about that random bikini store that I always thought looked compelling. I don't know, that's a weird thing to say, but it's just because they displayed the swimsuits from the ceiling.
Yeah.
Like they were hanging.
I remember Northern Reflections used to have a tree, like a fake plastic,
What?
like huge tree that you
Yes.
could like go inside.
What?
Yeah.
You know what that also just reminded me of? What if there was a big tree and on it were the products,
There we
like
go.
a Christmas tree?
So many options.
If it was, let's say, a candy store. Or what about Willy Wonka, right? Like that's something I think we can take inspiration from. This store, you can lick the walls. This
Perfect.
store, everything's edible. I used to work at a garden center where the owners would always just instill in us, in all the employees, everything's for sale. Even if it doesn't have a price tag, the customer can buy it if they want. And I just thought that was such a funny
That is
and
funny.
kind of soul idea. Like if they just wanted a rack that the things were being displayed on, they could buy it if they wanted.
So random.
Yeah.
Such a weird. Yeah, the garden center was a strange place. I'm going to do a little lightning round of ideas. I think these are all kind of implicit in the Solacene Mall and in any kind of solar punk vision for the future, but I'll just drop them here for anyone who maybe is thinking this and they're shouting at their phone saying, Alicia and Aaron, why aren't you saying these ideas?
I hope people do that. Do you think anyone's ever done that?
No.
Like finished one of our sentences or if they go like this? Do you think anyone's ever laughed listening to this?
I think so. We have our moments.
Yeah.
But maybe our sense of humor is so niche that only you and I find it funny. Okay. So,
Or so basic.
yeah. A recycling drop-off. A runway or a gallery.
Walkway.
Yes. And a secondhand shop. And it's going to be accessible by bike and bus. No parking lot.
Just talking about transport. Like in the airports, conveyor belts, escalators, round ones, elevators, glass elevators like in Willy Wonka that go sideways. What if there was just what if there was like a walking lane and a biking lane or skateboard lane?
Yeah, depending on the size of it.
And also, what about in WALL-E when the robots kind of get loose in the space station and there's all the different ones and some of them are leaving little painted lines as they go? So shopping carts, right?
Yes.
Shopping carts, soul.
Soul, super soul.
Those are just, there's something so, because it's the only place you see them. I guess that's also the key to it. Shopping carts with those tennis balls on top, I could take or leave, but just regular shopping carts. And what if we do weird shaped ones?
Why not?
Why would it have to be so universal?
I love this idea. Because kids love shopping carts especially.
Yeah.
Especially when they got the mini ones. But
You know which ones I used to hate?
which one?
I think this is more of a UK thing, but the ones where you have to put the
The money in.
The money in. Because my parents always say, you do it. And I'd be like, no, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Because I was scared of shopping carts and money.
It was an early opposition to the system.
Yeah, I was a young rebel. So, garment of the week. You've already alluded to it because you can see it right beside me. I can't hide it. But I'll hold it up for the people on YouTube. It will just cover the entire frame. And I'm probably holding it up at a really bad angle. And you can describe it for the people listening at home.
So if you've seen Lord of the Rings, it's like the elven cloaks that they give to the hobbits and the fellowship when they leave the forest elves. It's a heavy, heavy, heavy green cape with a black velvet lining, large buttons.
Velvet lining.
And it's fantastic.
Yeah, what are these buttons made of? This is Alicia's cape, that's why I'm asking her about it.
I'm not, like, kind of a wood plastic
they feel
hybrid.
like wood.
Yeah.
And the green is just the most kind of luxurious, rich person while also looking like you could be a forest elf shade that you can imagine.
Yeah.
Or the other inspiration I was thinking about, you mentioned Lord of the Rings, but because after this we're going to talk about movie costumes, Snufkin from
Very
the
Snufkin.
Moomins.
Yeah.
If you know, you know. He is very, very... She? Snufkin's
Snufkin.
very, very fashionable person.
Yeah, so I wore this cape on Christmas to, like, the Christmas pageant at a church here, and I felt like I would be cast as the tree because it's triangular when you wear it.
This is actually the first thing I've written. Looks like a triangle.
Yes.
And I just think in fashion, silhouette is all that matters. And also this is very serendipity because when you bought it, I won't say peer pressured, told you to buy it. I just I was like, no, you're getting this.
The thing is, I was returning pants that I had bought you, so the money was kind of in your court.
That's true.
And you were like, instead of buying yourself another pair of pants, why not buy me another coat?
It's this funny marriage phenomenon when you dress each other. Like you dress the other person, and it's partially you dress them because that's what you find attractive, and it's partially you dress them because I wish that fit me. And that's
there's a lot of that going on
because I want this cape. I like the shape of it. I like the color of it. I like just how comically heavy it is.
Yeah.
And you very rarely wear it, which is kind of annoying, but
it's because it's so heavy, and you also have to wear layers underneath it. So it's like you have to be going somewhere specific where you can take off all the layers. Because if you were going to the mall in this, you can't wear a backpack with it, can't bike in it. You'd have to be. Everything has to be in line. The stars have to be aligned to wear the cape, if that's all I'm saying.
The triangles have to be aligned.
But maybe if you're lucky someday, you'll shrink and it will fit you.
If I'm lucky, I'll shrink. Yeah. I just didn't know how to say
Any other information on the cape?
I mean, it's wool, I'm assuming. It doesn't... I just look, there's no label on it.
There's no... Yeah.
I don't even think there's a brand.
No.
Which is also part of the Snufkin serendipity soulfulness of it. Because I put it to you also that the internet has no serendipity.
Yeah.
There is never anything. It's always you search for something, in which case it's an intentional, you're seeking it out. You have to punch it into Google. Or the algorithm puts it in front of you, and the algorithm is not serendipitous at all. Maybe I'm intruding on some like wider discussion of free will here or something, but the algorithm, soulless, stumbling around a store, or maybe literally just falling down a flight of stairs onto a cape. Soul.
Yeah, I have no idea what it's made of. Because it doesn't feel like wool.
No, it must be wool.
But yeah, given the weight.
Yeah, the mass. You don't want to get that wet.
No.
Has it ever been cleaned?
Oh, no.
No. Okay, so the movie costumes that we wanted to take inspiration from, maybe this is, again, less of a systemic Solacene discussion and more of a individual, our own preferences, but we'll try and draw some principles from it. I will begin with the movie that inspired what I'm wearing to record this episode, which is just very, very basic white polo and blue jeans. A movie called Ocean Waves, which is one of Studio Ghibli's much less popular movies. I think it was straight to TV. It's from 1993 and it's on Netflix, so I recommend people watch it. But the story is irrelevant. It's
a very mild coming of age.
Yeah, very mild coming of age drama with the high school kid. It doesn't matter. you just have to watch it because it's one of the most visually, like one of the most stunning movies I've ever seen. And the animation is not that impressive, but just like the color scheme on everything is on point. It's a pure vibes movie. And going along with this is the costumes.
Yeah.
Just crispy. I mean, they're all Japanese, but they also spend some time in Hawaii. There's just something very like dreamy and collegiate, I guess, about it. So,
yeah. I remember when I watched that being obsessed with the costumes and probably going out and buying like a red and white striped shirt. I think one of the characters wear, and yeah, it really is super similar, the costuming, to my favorite costume movie ever, which is Call Me By Your Name. The costumes in that movie are just so perfect, and perhaps when I was trying to come up with other movies that I like the costumes in, this is like a 10 and everything else is like a 4 on my ranking, because it's just like even the best Oscar-winning costumes, there's something about the costumes in this movie which are so naturalistic, and Ocean Waves has a 2, but it's animated.
Yeah.
So it's like you can make things look a lot more naturalistic and fitting the...
Yeah, it's true. Most costumes in movies, especially ones that try and be normie or high school or current,
yeah,
they don't look anything like that.
And I don't know how to describe it besides... It's like the costumes on the people's bodies don't match the backgrounds. And I feel like that's something we've been talking a lot about. Yeah. Of like, it doesn't look like it was actually worn in that environment. And I've been noticing this about people as well lately, of like, if you see someone in their clothes, you can almost tell everything about them, and not just like, oh, they look like a skater, so their house must have a poster of like
Tony
something
Hawk.
Of Tony Hawk. Yeah. But it's just like you can kind of tell their eclecticism, I suppose.
So what you do is judge books by their covers.
Yes.
Okay.
But with this movie, the costume design, I read a ton about it, and the woman who did it, she's Roman, and so like grew up in Rome, and she said a lot of the costumes in Call Me By Your Name were taken out of her husband's wardrobe because he had all of his high school clothes from the 80s, and this movie's set in the 80s. So they were literally worn, like aged, and that's why it looked so perfect.
Serendipity.
I think. And I think when it comes to costuming movies, if I ever get the chance to contribute to that in any way, I would be really strict about sourcing period costumes, clothes that were genuinely worn in the period. And it's like a lot of movies are set today, but I feel like people either just go to Zara and like buy things they think look trendy instead of just going to a high school student's wardrobe and be like, I'm going to borrow this.
Yeah, something else, like my one comment on Call Me By Your Name, or just why costumes tend to look good in certain movies, is that there's a lot of fabric. Something that just like a personal opinion, but most clothes are too tight, and clothes look best when there's just a lot of it, when it's just like a big shirt.
Yeah, and I feel like
especially...
there's folds,
you can see the way it drapes and the way it hangs, and it like brushes up against a wall as someone's walking by. Like that's kind of what people like, I think. But...
Yeah, and it's just like, I feel like when people are designing costumes for movies, they're tailoring it to the person. Like, I want this to look super well fitted. But in reality, things aren't actually tailored for us.
But I don't think they should be, is what I'm saying.
Exactly.
But I guess that's another conversation. So my second one, also animated, also Studio Ghibli.
Porco Rosso.
Porco Rosso.
Aaron is obsessed with this sweet pig, Marco.
Yeah.
And he's kind of jealous of his physique.
I am.
And I think I won't steal the floor. You tell me about it.
Yeah, I'll just say this is perhaps one of my most embarrassing Google searches of recent times, which was Porco Rosso height and weight. And unfortunately, I got no information. But if I was to put a number on it, maybe 5'1", something like that, and like 220 pounds.
Yeah.
So he's just very short and very wide. And again, just my personal opinion, that's the best combination for looking nice in clothes. Also, Porco is a little bit of a get you a man who can do both, because he'll wear the aviator fit because he's a seaplane pilot / bounty hunter, but also he can clean up.
He can clean up,
and he can go and have a nice dinner at the hotel, and so I think it's that versatility about Porco that I really enjoy. Also, Porco Rosso, for some reason I didn't know this, but it was inspired by a 15-page manga that Miyazaki wrote or drew, which was called The Age of the Flying Boat. It's a watercolor manga, so that's now on my Christmas list.
Love that. My next one is Roman Holiday. It's similar to it follows my rules of dressing for movies. It looks natural yet iconic. More iconic, obviously, than Call Me By Your Name, because the outfits that are worn in that movie are just like timeless. I feel like it probably greatly inspired or was inspired by the little black dress theory, and it just, yeah, everyone looks normal and natural. And like the main character in that movie, she is supposed to be kind of like on the border of like middle class and upper class, so she's kind of straddling that. And it's really realistic, because I feel like in movies when there's someone who's straddling that, like trying to fit in with the upper class, their actual lifestyle is like what we would consider very bougie and very fancy. It's like the struggling journalist living in New York who has a walk-in closet and like a beautiful flat, and it's like, that's not realistic. But in this one, it's actually realistic. Like her apartment is small, and it's like, it's still a little bit like glamorized. It's
realistic for like the 60s maybe.
Yeah, it feels realistic. I think that's important in costuming and set design.
I have 3 more, and I guess I'll just rush through these because they're not at the Ghibli level for me, but they're more like honorable mentions.
Okay.
And one is the third Harry Potter film, Prisoner of Azkaban. This one is probably the only one that's notable for its costumes, because it's the first where they're just not wearing wizard robes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't explain it in the film. By the book, they should be wearing the robes, but here they just decided, no, it's more of a coming of age, so instead of them all wearing the black robes and pointed hats, we're going to have Harry in his blue shirt and Hermione in a like hoodie and Ron in, I don't know, something relatively poor looking.
Yeah.
And I think the fits in this movie are okay, but more so it's the tennis theory of it made Hogwarts look like a livable, real place rather than an entirely fantasy world. And I know a lot of people dislike it for that reason, which I think is a valid criticism. But I liked it because they seemed more like just kids running around. However magical the grounds were, they were just wearing like very, very, like almost deliberately boring, ugly, mundane muggle clothes, let's say. So I'll go for that one.
Yeah. I think often in fantasy or in period pieces, they try to make it look relatable yet still period. So like we watched a video the other day about historical costuming. It's like, yeah, so if it's going to be set in the 1700s, but it was released in the 50s, there'll be those kind of 50s silhouettes.
Yeah, there's a line about that in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The guy says, nothing anachronistic, but where does 1869 meet 1969? Something like that. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important in the costuming, so if it was genuinely like period, it would probably just look too, like you wouldn't really even like the characters to an extent, because like they need to be familiar to us.
But I don't think that matters though, sometimes. I mean, I guess it just depends what the movie's trying to do.
Well, that's what I'm going to get to, is in Lord of the Rings, I feel like they were just like, yeah, the hobbits have huge hairy feet and they wear these like 15-piece outfits, and it's just is how it is. Yeah. And in its surrealism, it becomes kind of familiar because it's just like you feel so immersed in it. And so if a period movie or a fantasy is going to just like genuinely immerse you in it, then they can go and do whatever. And I feel like Lord of the Rings really didn't shy away from making things foreign and making things just like awe-inspiring, I guess, in the costuming.
Who do you think has the best fit in the trilogy?
Ooh. Dare I say Gandalf's outfit is just like...
Gandalf the grey or the white?
The grey.
Yeah, okay.
It's just so much fabric, as you said. But that's just says something about my style of just like, I love huge...
I like how he has a big stick. I'm always a big...
Yeah, big stick, big
guy.
hat. Fits him. It's like when people say their like dogs start to look like their owners and vice versa. I feel like Gandalf, like his clothes just like are an extension of him. And that makes sense for his character. And then the elves are obviously all like proper and shiny all the time, even when they've been out in the woods for however long. And yeah, the costuming in that was fantastic. And yeah, my solace scene takeaway from the movie costumes are being obviously dressing for what you're doing, but just like
you go slay some orcs, you go hit the mines.
Exactly. But also, yeah, making your clothes an extension of your life and your personality. And it's just like, yeah, that tracks. That makes sense. Yeah. That's what they're going to be wearing.
So the last two movies you haven't seen, I don't think. That's another weird marriage phenomenon, that you keep not only a catalog of everything that you've seen, but also I just know with quite a degree of certainty if you've seen a movie or not. Mm-hmm. Which maybe that's kind of sad. I don't know. It's Petite Maman, which came out in 2021, and this is a very small movie. It's only like 70 minutes and there's only like 3 characters and 2 of them are 8-year-old girls. But they are wearing these massive coats and jumpers all the way through, sweaters, which just look very, I don't usually like this word, but cozy. And it reminded me of how long it took when you were young to get ready to go outside when it was in the winter, or to come back inside afterwards. It took like a good 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because you're just wearing these massive snow pants. Kids in snowsuits are also a favorite inspiration of mine, because the way they just look so wide, and also how kind of unself-conscious they are, I guess. Because I feel like as an adult, well, I know this, we just stop wearing snowsuits. It's not that it stopped snowing. We just stop going out in it, I guess. And also, I think no one wants to be wearing these massive, very, very, like, incredibly loud pants that just everyone can hear you from across the hall as you're walking. But there's something really glorious about that. So that was my pick. Okay.
My next is my only period one that I chose, which is The Favorite. I remember watching it and being like, these are really impressive dresses and beautiful costumes, but not gaudy. Like, I feel like a lot of period costumes, because they're going for the Oscar, basically.
Yeah.
And maybe they're super, super specific. Like, there was that movie recently came out. I don't think it was House of Gucci, but it was like a fashion movie where they were like recreating all of the dresses of someone.
Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris?
Maybe. Yeah.
I don't know.
Something like that. It was like a fashion-based movie, so they're meticulously recreating dresses. It's like, obviously it's period and like accurate, but it's almost like you need to tone it down a bit for us, because when you're watching it, it's like, okay, maybe they actually were wearing things covered in jewels, but is that realistic? And when we watched Beauty and the Beast, like the French one, it's all black and white.
Oui, la belle et la bête.
La belle et la bête. I loved the costumes in that because they were campy, but it's like when a movie's black and white, it needs to be campy, or when it's Wizard of Oz, it needs to be a bit more Broadway, I guess.
Yeah, theatrical.
Say. But with the quality, if you're going to be shooting a movie in IMAX, I feel like you can tone it down a bit. It's like we get the point because the colors come across.
Yeah, I always think that's like like shooting on film even versus digital. Like there's a massive difference in I think what you should put on in the frame, just because of how it's presented. But that's maybe another discussion for the film
very
semester.
Technical.
And then final one for me is a movie called Her, which came out in 2013. All of our movies very recent.
Yeah.
And that's something interesting. Surprised you didn't pick Mamma Mia. I guess that's still recent also though. But I think maybe next week we could have a question about decades. Like some, people talk about different eras or like history, some kind of
as well.
Historical informed question. But Her is interesting because it's set in the near future.
Yeah.
And the clothes look, as we say, slightly ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And not just the clothes, but the buildings, everything. I remember this video game scene where it's just like very, very plausible 15 years from now type thing. And I don't think the clothes are anything spectacular, but they're bright colored and they're memorable. And I guess that's only ever good if it's memorable.
Yeah.
And not because they're ugly. It's just like, oh, that's slightly different. And it's funny because I think they're very like informed by past trends. It's just like high-waisted things with bold primary colors. But when people say 80s are in, 90s are in, 70s are in, early 2000s are in, and people who live through those times will say it with a kind of cynicism, like, oh, we were wearing exactly this in the 80s, but it's never actually exactly the same. It always does look quite different. Yeah,
when I heard the costume designer talking about the Call Me By Your Name costuming, she was like, we could have gone with like the 80s cliches. But they went around.
That's maybe why they look different, because we just go for the greatest hits cliches type thing. Exactly. But also, I think even when it comes back like early 2000s, right? Like that's very in vogue right now. The things people wear, the whole outfit doesn't look like something straight out of the early 2000s. There's always something slightly different.
Yeah, because the silhouettes have changed, like the body, like expectations have changed a bit, hairstyles.
Yeah, exactly. So I think when people talk like cyclical, it's not 100% like accurate. Maybe.
Yeah, it's evolving.
That was too fashion-y for me.
Too fashion-y, too movie.
Yeah.
But that's kind of our dynamic. Off screen, off mic. Speaking of off mic, the episode is over. Thank you for listening. If you want to buy our zines, they're on our website. Buy our clothes on our website. We are on Tumblr now.
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
Okay. Thanks for listening. Bye.